Hi guys, welcome to Cults, Conspiracies and Chaos. One of the most often overlooked aspects of this global death cult is that this agenda is not something that has suddenly come about in the 20th century or even in the late 1700s when Mayor Amschel Rothschild joined forces with the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, and the Messianic cult leader, Jacob Frank. The fact is, this death cult can be traced back to and beyond the snake brotherhoods and mystery schools of ancient Babylon, in terms of its satanic agenda for humanity, that was built upon inverting the knowledge passed down to these occultists from the ancient Egyptians, the Mayan culture, and perhaps even Atlantis. It is important to remember that the knowledge that these brotherhoods held was not in of itself even negative or positive, but that it was down to the individual member on how it was used or indeed abused. Thus, we have the core mentality of Satanism, which is the principle of inversion. This information was passed down through the certain bloodlines and specific brotherhoods and is still used and abused by them today. The most powerful evidence that these brotherhoods still control the world today can be seen in its architecture and symbolism. Modern-day mainstream historians will have you believe that the Roman Empire fell in AD 476, when they claim that the Western Roman Empire came to an end. A quick look around at the architecture and symbolism of Washington DC and the banking centre of the City of London will tell you that this is not the case. Washington DC was built on land once known as Rome, Maryland, on land given to the government by a chap named and known as John Pope. It's almost like they're laughing at us, isn't it? The 7 hills of Washington DC, including Capitol Hill, are based on the 7 hills of Rome, one of which was named Capitoline Hill. The architecture of both the US Supreme Court and the Bank of England are clearly based on the Temple of Saturn, which was situated near Capitoline Hill in Rome. Even the plan for the European Union was initiated near Capitoline Hill in Rome. Rome never fell. It simply relocated, rebranded, and now operates covertly instead of overtly. So is it any wonder that one of the most powerful groups within the cult's web of deceit is the Club of Rome? The Club of Rome is one of the 6 main organisations from which the cult sends out its minions, spies and operatives. The other 5 are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, of which the current UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is a member, the Bilderberg Group, the Royal Institute of International Affairs and the United Nations. At the apex or the centre of these groups is the Round Table, named after the famous Round Table of King Arthur. The Round Table was named as such because it implied that all had an equal say in the overall agenda and that no one was the head of the table. The Round Table was created by the Illuminati frontman Cecil Rhodes, who plundered South Africa after becoming Prime Minister of the Cape Colony in 1890, forcing black people from their lands to make way for Western industrial development. The Club of Rome was handed the task of convincing, and I stress the term con, the world into believing that human-caused climate change is a real threat and that we are all going to die because there is too much CO2 in the air or the sun is too hot. One of the main writings of the Club of Rome is the book The Limits to Growth that came out in 1972, which included research through an MIT team coordinated by Dennis and Donella Meadows. The book claimed that with a closed system like the Earth, it is impossible for the population, food supply, industrialisation and exploitation of the natural resources and pollution of the environment to continue without sooner or later collapsing. What we have to remember is that the occultists who were funding this research were themselves some of the most wealthy and greedy individuals our planet has ever witnessed. Just take a look at King Charles today. His coronation in 2023 was reported by CNBC to have cost up to $112 million, but he wants you to cut back on your gas and oil usage because of the environment. The reason I mention King Charles here is because he is front and centre pushing the human caused climate change scam for his black nobility cousins through the likes of Klaus Schwab and his World Economic Forum. The sad reality is that the human caused climate change agenda is at its core about blaming you for the state of planet Earth today. Here is a direct quote from another Club of Rome publication, The First Global Revolution, which was released in 1991 as a follow-up to their 1972 release, The Limits to Growth. Here's the quote. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, now climate change, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. But in designating them as the enemy, we fall into the trap about which we have already warned, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behaviour that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. Remember, this is from an official Club of Rome publication. They are clearly attempting to lay all the blame on humanity when we know that the climate changes naturally and within a cycle. Let's read that line again. The real enemy then is humanity itself. Two things come to mind when reading this passage. The first is that the Satanists behind the Club of Rome clearly have an anti-human agenda, and the second is that they see themselves other than you, other than the human being that you are. They certainly do not blame themselves, because in reality they know it's all a lie. And that is why they continue to fly their private jets all over the world. The coming carbon credits are simply a way to control you whilst emotionally abusing you into thinking you are to blame for all the world's woes. The Club of Rome was founded in 1968 at the Accademia di Lincia in Rome, Italy. The club consists of 104 members selected from current and former heads of state, government, UN administrations, politicians, diplomats, scientists, economists and business leaders. The club was born out of the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. In 1968, this organisation held a symposium in Italy in collaboration with the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefellers being close associates of Bill Gates and under the direction of the Rothschild banking family. The symposium is said to have focused on the dangers of exponential growth, which in reality means keeping a lid on the development of the common man in relation to those who already hold the wealth and therefore power of the nations. They can't have us catching up to them in terms of financial wealth, can they? The entire human-caused climate change scam of the Club of Rome is aimed at progressives, the same guys who went loco at anyone daring not to wear a mask during the COVID scam because they were saving granny and you were killing them. The progressive mindset is the perfect target for the tax avoidance scams that function under the label of a not-for-profit organisation, such as the World Health Organization, the Rockefeller Foundation, and George Soros' Open Society Foundation, the World Wildlife Fund, and numerous others. Let's just take a look at that stellar lineup, shall we? The World Health Organization is Bill and Melinda Gates. The Rockefeller Foundation is, of course, the Rockefellers. The Open Society Foundation is George Soros. The World Wildlife Fund is King Charles. These are all cult assets to varying degrees and levels. Even King Charles answers to the other nobility families, not least the black nobility families, who are Roman aristocratic families, because the Roman Empire never fell, it just faded into the shadows. The black nobility are deeply connected to the Vatican and their own papal nobility, who are described as aristocrats of the Holy See. This is yet another example of the cult playing both sides. Both the supposedly Protestant British royals and the Catholic Pope are supposed to believe in their own flavour of Christianity, when in reality they both serve an age-old satanic agenda that is the inversion of what they claim to believe. This can be seen on the cross of the Holy See coat of arms, which is another version of the symbol used by the Yale Secret Society, Skull and Bones, the cross being the X that represents Saturn, and the British royal crest for their Balmoral Castle, which is not only named after the Canaanite god Baal, which was also known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, but includes the sigil of Saturn at its centre. We also have Elon Musk with his X Corp pushing the transhumanist aspect of this death cult agenda. These are the guys who are pushing the Club of Rome's human-caused climate change scam. The sad fact is that an increase in carbon dioxide, or in other words CO2, is good for plant life, making the plants greener and more bountiful, which increases food supply and the overall health of the animals that eat them. The Club of Rome stooges and cult assets such as Al Gore and Greta Thunberg are demonising the gas of life. Others grifting off the human-caused climate change scam are the likes of Elon Musk, who entered the electric car race when he joined Tesla in 2004. Nikola Tesla would be rolling in his grave knowing what Saudi royal-funded Elon Musk is doing in his name. Musk is currently pretending to be an enemy of Google, but that didn't stop him from taking an investment from Google Alphabet for Tesla in 2006. In 2023, the Entrepreneur website reported that Elon Musk has said that human-caused climate change was the biggest threat that humanity faces this century, except for the threat of AI. The sad fact is that Elon is contributing to AI with his XAI, which involves funding from Sequoia Capital, which was an early investor in Google. And of course, he's shooting up thousands of Starlink satellites into the night sky, ready to hook you up to the internet of all things. The Club of Rome sits around a big round table and we are not invited. The Club of Rome would not have been possible without the controversial Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes was a British-born mining magnate and colonial statesman. To his supporters, Rhodes was a genius credited with shaking the British people out of a creepy lethargy. In reality, Rhodes was a colonial politician who was given near dictatorial power over South Africa, who bullied those around him. He was known as a self-serving opportunist, but if you go a little deeper, he was actually serving the City of London, who were backing his South Africa company. It was Rhodes who started the diamond and gold mining empires called De Beers and Consolidated Goldfields. These empires were built off the backs of the black mining slaves, including children. Unfortunately, we see the same today in the Congo with the exploitation of black families and child labour in regards to mining cobalt for rechargeable batteries. Yes, the same rechargeable batteries used in electric vehicles such as Tesla vehicles. According to IB Times website, as of July 2023, Elon Musk is yet to prove that Tesla's cobalt suppliers were not using child or forced labour in the Congo. Cecil Rhodes was an avid follower of John Ruskin, who in turn was deeply influenced by the work of Plato. Plato was a Greek philosopher most famous for the allegory of the cave, which contributed to the simulation theory. Plato was born in 428 BC and lived primarily in Athens. His theories and philosophies, not least on the nature of reality, are still prevalent today. One aspect of Plato's belief that is often overlooked is that he believed in a top-down society, which he believed should be controlled by philosopher kings or guardians. This was a structure of three classes. At the top, you had your philosopher kings, below them were the soldiers who protected society, and at the bottom were the producers who created the goods. Here we have a structure of kings and the wealthy lording it over a police force who control the workers. Plato was highly critical of democracy, and anyone who has done even a small amount of research into these topics and the likes of Cecil Rhodes and the Round Table knows that we don't really have a democracy. We have the illusion of choice, much like the illusions on the wall of Plato's cave. This mentality was passed down from Plato and picked up by the likes of John Ruskin thousands of years later, which then inspired the mindset of Cecil Rhodes, who copied Ruskin's inaugural lecture in longhand and kept it with him for the remainder of his life. Cecil Rhodes believed in the creation of a world government centred on Britain. He is claimed to have been a member of the infamous Committee of 300, which is also known as the Olympians. The Olympians were named after a group of 12 Greek gods who ruled after overthrowing the Titans. These were the offspring of the Titans Kronos and Rhea. Kronos is another name for the god Saturn, and this is why we have the Saturn death cult of today, X being an ancient symbol for Saturn. The mythology goes that Kronos consumed all of his children because he was given a prophecy from his parents Gaia and Uranus. One of his children was destined to one day overthrow him. Zeus was saved from being consumed by Kronos by his mother Rhea, when she wrapped a stone in swaddle in replacement for the child, and Kronos swallowed it, unaware that it was not his son. Eventually Zeus returns to save his siblings, forcing Kronos to disgorge all 5 members of the family as well as the stone. These are the mythologies that form much of the background and the beliefs of the Saturn death cult that rules the world today. A cult that hide behind the likes of those that Cecil Rhodes served, such as the British royals, Illuminati bankers, and the European bloodline families. The Round Table was structured on the same principles as the Illuminati and the Freemasons. David Icke writes in his book And the Truth Will Set You Free that this structure consisted of an inner circle called the Society of the Elect, who knew exactly what the game and the aim is, and an outer circle of friends made up of influential people who could help the cause but who didn't always know the full implications or ambitions of the Round Table. Lord Astor was one such famous name, who was not only a member of the Committee of 300, which some researchers believe sits just below the Council of 13 in the Illuminati pyramid, but also a member of the Round Table Society of the Elect. Other members connected into the Round Table by satellite groups such as the Committee of 300 include Lord Kitchener and the former British Prime Minister Lord Salisbury, who also was a close friend of Winston Churchill. Others on the list are Nathan Rothschild, who represented the interests of the Rothschild family, who along with other banking families such as the Warburgs, Schroders and JP Morgan controlled Cecil Rhodes and the Round Table project. This is the money and power behind the human-caused climate change scam, who promote the mindset that humanity is the greatest threat to humanity itself. Cecil Rhodes died in 1902, leaving a wealth of funds that still to this day contribute towards the overall agenda. In his will, Rhodes created a system of scholarships which funds the usual suspects at Oxford University in the UK. The most famous Rhodes scholar is of course Bill Clinton, who went on to become the 42nd President of the United States and was allegedly involved with cocaine smuggling as Governor of Arkansas. This happened whilst Clinton was under George H.W. Bush, who was a regular attendee at Bohemian Grove, as was President Ronald Reagan. Clinton is closely associated with both Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Oxford University became dominated by the Round Table, and this continued after Rothschild agent Alfred Milner took over the leadership when Rhodes died in 1902. Milner would later go on to be involved with the recruitment for the Royal Institute of International Affairs. This is more commonly known as Chatham House. The stated mission of the Royal Institute of International Affairs is to help governments and societies build a sustainable, secure, prosperous and just world. Here we see the term sustainable, which is a fundamental buzzword used within the human-caused climate change agenda. Those involved with Chatham House include Lord Arthur Balfour, who would become one of the first presidents of the Royal Institute. Lord Balfour is most famous for issuing the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which was a letter sent to Lord Walter Rothschild, which promised a national home for Jewish people in the land of Palestine. This came about in 1947. This declaration was all part of the messianic agenda we see playing out in the Middle East today, where Netanyahu's genocide of at least 40,000 people in Palestine of July 2024 is still taking place. You might be thinking, why would an Englishman of great wealth like Cecil Rhodes be connected to the Balfour Declaration via the Round Table and the Royal Institute of International Affairs? Well, there is something known as British Israelism, which is a pseudo-religious belief that the people of Great Britain are genetically, racially and linguistically the direct descendants of the 10 lost tribes of ancient Israel. Yes, you heard that correctly. Now, when I say people of Great Britain, we have to bear in mind that the bloodlines and cult members mean that they are the descendants of the lost tribes of Israel, not you or I. A comment made by Cardinal John Henry Newman when asked why he left the Church of England and joined the Roman Catholic Church in 1845 said that there was a real danger that British Israelism would take over the Church of England. I would suggest that both the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church are at their apex, one and the same, and the deity they are both worshipping is not the God that most of their followers think they are worshipping. British Israelism may explain why the British royals and the UK government are clearly in the pocket of Israel, as is the government of the United States. King Charles is pushing the human-caused climate change scam in line with the Round Table. Eventually, this vast puzzle begins to slot together and all roads lead through Rome and onto Babylon, or Babylondon as some researchers describe it. The Cecil Rhodes founded Round Table is believed to have been a key component in the creation of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was the first attempt of the death cult to try to create a world government by stealth. It was founded on the 10th of January 1920 by the Paris Peace Conference, Paris being a major centre for the global cult's operations, much like Rome. The official story of the League's purpose was stated in its pagan-sounded eponymous covenant. This covenant was created to enforce peace, which is an oxymoron if I've ever heard one. Members of the original commission include US President Woodrow Wilson, Colonel House, Robert Cecil, amongst many others. An initial draft was co-written by Cecil Hurst and David Hunter Milner, who was the advisor to President Wilson at the time. From the get-go, many of these nations could not agree on much, and the entire thing appears to have been a bit of a shambles, with nations arguing over the fine details, such as who would declare war and racial equality. All states were required to submit complaints for arbitration or judicial inquiry before going to war. There's an old age saying that a donkey is a horse created by a committee, and this appears to have been what was going on from the get-go with the League of Nations. At least Woodrow Wilson won the Nobel Peace Prize for his part in creating the League. But again, this is the same prize Barack Obama won for his contribution to the cult in 2009. They bloody love their medals, awards and knighthoods, but it is a cult after all. By 1945, the League had morphed into what we know today as the United Nations. It has been suggested by some researchers that the name United Nations was decided by President Roosevelt during a meeting with Winston Churchill in 1941 at the White House. This meeting took place shortly before the attack on Pearl Harbor that garnered the public support the cult needed for the US to enter the Second World War. You can't have a world war without soldiers willingly signing up to murder each other for the greater good. Churchill himself was an agent of the Rothschilds and a clear friend to Victor Rothschild, who was exposed as the fifth man of the Cambridge spy ring. And while some still believe he was a spy for the KGB, it is more likely that he was running all intelligence agencies across the board, not working for them. We see the same play today with the attack on Israel by Hamas, which has led to the genocide in Gaza. Hamas were initially supported by Israel and Netanyahu, and many believe the October 7th attacks were allowed to happen. A report titled Detailed End-to-End Raid Training was made available to the IDF weeks before the attack, but the attacks were still allowed to happen. When we see that the Rothschilds were fundamental in the creation of modern-day Israel and Zionism, as well as being behind Cecil Rhodes' Round Table, then it becomes alarmingly clear that this all fits together. The United Nations was built upon many of the people surrounding President Roosevelt at the time, including numerous people from the Council on Foreign Relations, such as Isaiah Bowman, James T. Shotwell, and Russian-born Leo Pawlowski. The United Nations built its headquarters in New York, another major centre for cult operations, on land given to them free of charge by the Rockefellers. David Icke writes in his book, And the Truth Will Set You Free, that in the background of the UN, names like Morgan, Warburg, Schiff and Marburg were manipulating those in the spotlight. David writes that the UN is a Trojan horse for the global fascist communist tyranny known as the New World Order. Today, that tyranny takes the form of a technocracy with its modern day gophers such as Klaus Schwab and Elon Musk, coming from a more technological transhumanist background. This is the same anti-human eugenics agenda. They just call it Human 2.0 now and try to sell it to you as a benefit in case the machines outthink you, you bloody stupid humans.
Connecting.
The United Nations birthed a number of connected organisations which led us right back to the Club of Rome. These include Bill Gates and his World Health Organization. Gates' father was a founding member of eugenics cult Planned Parenthood. We had the UN Population Fund as well as the Rockefeller's Population Council, which was founded in 1952 by J.D. Rockefeller. Personally, I think all it takes is one look at the occult symbolism of Capitoline Hill and its 7 hills, replicated from Rome, as well as the symbolism in the City of London and the Vatican to know that the cult of Babylon never went away. But some will always put this down to a fancy for the style of architecture, or coincidence. The evidence shows that the Round Table extended its reach and control across the Atlantic and into the United States. That is, if we are to believe that the US did truly achieve independence from the British monarchy to begin with, and that is in of itself highly questionable. In the early years of the 20th century, the Round Table took control of what is known today as the Eastern Establishment. The Eastern Establishment alludes to a group of shadowy figures who work with the British and European Round Table members under a common global policy. These include the Carnegie United Kingdom Trust, the various Rockefeller Trusts, JP Morgan, and of course the Rothschilds, who were the financial advisors for the British nobility and the British royal family. Evelyn de Rothschild was the personal financial advisor of Queen Elizabeth II. If we zoom out a little and look at the situation, it appears that it's not so much that the Eastern Establishment is working with the British, but that through the Round Table they are actually working with a global cult that believes itself to be one of the lost 10 tribes of Israel, and therefore God's chosen people. The British royals may claim to be Protestant, but all roads lead back to a satanic death cult who believe they are destined to bring about the return to the age of Saturn, their new world order. This cult infiltrates all religions, secret societies, governments, organisations, political parties, the mainstream and alternative media, intelligence agencies, and even your local councils. And if they are not infiltrating it and inverting it from within, they are creating the organisations themselves. Such organisations include the Round Table and the United Nations. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Cults, Conspiracies and Chaos. In future episodes, we'll be looking at many of the interlocking secret societies, organisations and indeed cults that are all part of this worldwide web of deceit. Until we meet again, take care and goodbye.